Welcome to the InGeneral podcast, the Jurassic Outpost podcast. This is episode 108. My name's Jack, and I'm joined with Chris.
Hello, how's it going, boys and girls?
And I'm joined with Assis.
How's it going? Hello.
Well, everyone's wanting us to talk about the best Jurassic in the franchise, and we're finally doing it, everyone. We're talking about Jurassic Park 3. So buckle in. Hold on to your butts.
What's funny is you know that I'm not the biggest Jurassic Park 3 fan, but like Jack and I were talking about the podcast, like what to talk about. And I kind of kept going between like Jurassic Park 3 or Jurassic 4, and we landed on this. So
Because Jurassic Park 4 also is a very meaty background that we have like a decade of like behind the scenes to get into. So we have to study it up, get ready and get behind our lore.
We've the sales script again. A lot, but like if we ever want to do a proper retrospective episode, there is so much more to talk about.
It's going to be like a properly researched. It might not even be a podcast. Potentially it might be a video because with the amount of just detail and things that happened before we got Jurassic World.
That's that development hell period. But yeah, today, Jurassic Park 3. And there is a lot to talk about with this movie. This movie went through its own development hell during production.
A mini development hell.
As many know, the common story is that Jurassic Park 3 filmed without a script, which is
what did Macy call it? William H. Macy called it like a rudderless ship, launching a rudderless ship.
Yeah, and like even the crew shirts, weren't they like, we survived the production, and like in the background it's like, oh no, the T-Rex ate another script page or something like that. Like the production like everyone who worked on this movie was just pulling out their hair, and like they're like, well, we somehow finished the movie once it was finished.
And it's funny, I watched the movie last night. I think Assis watched the movie last night. Did you watch the movie last night, Chris?
Oh god, no. I watched Star Wars. I'm catching up on Star Wars Rebels before Ahsoka comes out.
So you know what I was doing before I watched Jurassic Park 3? I was like, it's getting late. It's around 10 o'clock my time. He was like, I was playing Baldur's Gate 3 to keep it very topical. I was like, okay, you know what? I'm play some Baldur's Gate 3, play some Jurassic Park 3 in the background, watch that. But you know how good Jurassic Park 3 is, guys? It just sucked me in. I had to put the Baldur's Gate 3 down. I had to finish Jurassic Park 3 before I picked her back up. And that's how much I love Jurassic Park 3. I still think it's the perfect dose of Jurassic. Like a yearly dose. If you want to watch a yearly Jurassic, I say it's Jurassic Park 3. You're quickly in and out, and that's all you need. Just a quick bit of action.
I think the three of us are roughly the same age. So I think we were roughly all kind of experienced it at the same part of our childhood, right? When that movie came out. Chris, I remember you saying that when you were a kid and you watched the movie, you hated it back then anyway.
It let me down. Yeah, I have a very fond memory of my mom being like, "What'd you think?" And I was like, "I didn't like it." And she was like,
"This was one of those kids as a kid." You know what I'm talking about?
He's one of those kids. Yeah.
Contrarians.
I
do you like SpongeBob? No, it's a bit too low humor for me.
Oh god, I love SpongeBob. I love SpongeBob. Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends and Powerpuff Girls, among many others. No, I don't know. I think I just had high expectations for Jurassic Park 3. I had read the books by that age, and I just don't think Jurassic Park 3. I expected a much bigger story, and Jurassic Park 3 was a monster movie.
But here's the thing, though. We have to remember this. Chris, you are the oldest of us three, right? So you were probably 12-ish when
I was. Hold on. I can just do the math.
So you were so old now that the math has become hard for us to remember. We're so old that when you have to confirm your age on a website, you have to scroll pretty far down these days.
What, I was 9? 10?
You were 9, and you were like, you know what, this movie's not good. Okay, so I was 7 or something.
It's the first memory I ever have of having that happen, but that's because I loved Jurassic Park so much. And I had certain, the way that I loved it was a very specific way. And Jurassic Park 3, admittedly, like it or not, is a very different movie than the other Jurassic Park movies. So
how old were you when you saw it?
9, you said.
9 to 11? I don't know. What?
I was 8.
Weird. How old were you when you saw it?
8.
Then I was 7.
Then I was 9.
Okay, so each a year apart, and when you're a kid, you change every year.
So that makes sense, Chris. I have a question then. Has your hate or has your love, or how's your like enjoyment of the movie changed over the years? Has it changed in terms of positivity or negativity? Do you hate it more now or less?
I think I still walk away with the same overall experience with the movie, but I can appreciate what it gets right. I can very much more systematically sort of break it down and understand what I like about it, what I don't like about it, um, understand what it was going for versus what it like pulled off. But overall, I don't necessarily hate the movie. I just don't enjoy watching it that much. I enjoy watching parts of it. I think I enjoy watching it more with people, but it's certainly not a movie I put on when I'm by myself. Some movies I like a lot more in a social setting, and that's a movie that I can enjoy a lot more in a social setting, with people that like the movie and whatnot, as opposed to just what I can't pull What I Do with the Lost World and just put it on and get sucked in.
It is that's the thing about the Jurassic Park 3. It's such a fun movie that you gotta watch it with the group because once the group is there, everyone just starts yelling and hollering, and it's a good time for everyone. I can't believe we haven't watched it together yet.
Hey,
That's the
that's
worst
Cooper.
part. We've seen the Lost World together, Jurassic World together. I think
I
Jurassic
have
Park.
distinct memories of watching Jurassic Park 3 with some of the Outpost crew. Were you asleep?
I was probably asleep. See, they waited for me to go to sleep because they knew I was going to talk through the entire thing.
Yeah, yeah, you gotta have stunned silence for that movie.
I almost specifically remember Ryan quoting bits of Jurassic Park 3 while we were watching it.
This hurts my soul, man. I can't believe they did this
When
without me.
Ryan was saying, like, oh, what the hell does he say? But Ryan thought he says, "Give it to me," when when he was down in front of the plane.
Oh, you know what? I
Get
do
off the
remember
way.
this now.
Yeah, we watched it. I think
Yes,
we
okay, fair
went
enough.
so off the rails at some point that like we just lost track of the movie.
We were younger back then. We weren't as refined in our, I guess.
Or
I
as
guess we were more
tired,
tangent oriented back then. We just didn't care. We had no arrow guiding us. We just went whichever way.
or as tired. I mean, we can all see each other, and I don't know about you, but I can distinctly tell that I'm very exhausted by looking at my camera right now.
For those who can't see, Jack and Chris look like they've been pulling some all-nighters, working on some beyond the gate. Sorry, and I just came back from vacation at home, and I'm like refreshed and recharged and full of energy and like life. It's like, oh my god, I feel
Looking
like
like Ex Machina over there.
I do.
Yeah.
I have a bald head now, and I got a big old beard, and I feel like
Crazy
I
beard.
gotta learn those dance moves. I gotta learn those dance moves and start doing that for Halloween.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
That would
Clear
be
up
so
the dance floor.
I watched JP3 last night, and I gotta say it was a lot of fun. I can always separate the fact that I feel like it's not as good as the first two. Obviously, for me, Lost World is my favorite sequel, but Jurassic Park 3 I still get a lot of enjoyment of, and I think spending most of my teenage years waiting for Jurassic Park 4 and then ultimately never getting it and getting the last three movies that happened, I can only appreciate the third movie so much more. Uh, for me, it feels like a Jurassic Park movie. And again, it is missing certain elements. It does feel like a monster movie at times, except for the Velociraptors. I feel like the development of the Raptors is one thing that is such a highlight of that film.
I think
Yeah.
everyone can say they're fans of the franchise Velociraptors #3.
The Velociraptors are so well done, and I think
Designed
that
two wise.
they're a very smart way to push the intelligence of the raptors in a very naturalistic way. The Jurassic World movies also try to push the intelligence of the raptors, but they never come off as intelligent, nor do they come off as believable. In my own personal opinion, they come off as intelligent in the Jurassic World films, but just a different type of I don't know, the Jurassic Park 3 raptors. Every scene with them, whew, oh, I love those raptors. Thailand Velociraptors.
Yeah, you get a real.
Is that
sense of it.
canon now? Is that like the canon name for it?
We were allowed to use it in Jurassic World Revealed.
Then it is. It's good enough for me. They're called Highland Raptors, I guess. Look at that. I'm learning things every day, guys.
This
Been
will
watching the
trigger
movie for how
people,
many
but
years?
Chris's head canon is now canon. It's now canon of the franchise. So
Careful, guys. We don't want some triggering going on.
How do you think Rexy happened? I'm not a fan of Rexy, by the way, but yeah.
no, and anybody that says Quilliam should just forget that they're a fan and just get the hell out.
I don't even know what that stuff is. I see that on Twitter sometimes. I'm not really sure how that happened. What is that? What is that?
It's disgusting, is what it is. Absolute insult.
It's disgusting.
Well, I don't even know what it is. So.
Quilliam is just
It's just not funny.
Jurassic World introduced the concepts of like pet names for dinosaurs, so Quilliam became the pet name. Although the thing is that doesn't work is there's not just one male quilled velociraptor. If there was just one, I could understand the pet name a little bit more, but there are multiple males in the movie. So which
Maybe
one is
of them
fucking
is the one.
Quilliam? I need to know. You know what? If you're gonna name one Quilliam, name it the one male raptor that didn't have
Dominion.
the one that didn't have a complete stripe. You know how there's one that has a broken stripe that almost looks like spots going down its side.
Mm-hmm.
That one can be Quilliam.
No, that's Spotty.
That's Specky.
Spotty,
Speckles or something.
Speckle, Peanut.
Yeah.
I have a question. I was seeing this on Twitter. Speaking of Twitter, I was in Jurassic Park 3, of course, on topic. What's up with that one reviewer who said this is better than the first movie? I want to know what he's smoking and where can I get it? I want to see how he saw that movie because if he had some enhancements, I want those enhancements.
I don't know who that is, but if I had to hazard a guess of why they liked it more, is because they probably couldn't buy the concept of Jurassic Park, and since Jurassic Park takes itself very seriously, if they couldn't buy it, they were able to buy it a lot more in a movie that took itself way less seriously. Jurassic Park 3 took itself less seriously, so it probably connected more with them because I'm just guessing here, but if I had to hazard a guess, it's probably because they liked the movie because it took itself less serious because they couldn't connect with the raw concept because to them it was too outlandish. That would be my guess.
I mean, that could be valid, but the Daily Mail isn't known for its
it's the Daily Mail.
top of the line journalism. I have a feeling it was
for ad buy revenue.
They got paid. Universal paid them.
No, they weren't paid. It was just to sell magazines or articles or whatever
exactly.
It was back in 2001.
It was just review bait. Just get it on the front cover, better than the original. People will pick that up, read it, review it.
Yeah.
Oh wow, it sounds amazing, and it is amazing. But it's not better than the original, I think.
Or it was the first one they ever saw, and they saw it as a kid, and then somehow wrote a review right afterwards. And then, in which case,
12-year-old wrote a review, 14-year-old.
And I won't lie, if I never saw Jurassic Park or The Lost World or read the books, and I saw Jurassic Park 3, I would have probably loved the hell out of that movie.
Do you think there's people out there that have only seen Jurassic Park 3 was their entry into Jurassic Park as the thing, and that's their favorite? Like that's their number one.
JP3 was Jaden's entry into the franchise. You know, Jaden.
My man, I knew I liked that kid for many reasons, but that's another reason. I added to the list.
That was his first one, I believe. Unless I'm wrong, I'm sorry, Jaden. But I believe JP3 was his first.
I think you're right.
I had fun. I have to admit, I had fun last night watching it. I think it's a great movie. I think the fact it's shot on film and it's 2001, it's got that really kind of nice film look to it. Like I'm a big
old
film guy, as in like the format of film. So it's just nice to watch it and see the kind of grain, the real grain, not digital grain. That has a big thing for me because I'm like, it feels like it is a product of its era, and I like watching movies from that kind of early 2000s era.
I still need to watch it on 4K. In fact, I've never.
4K transfer is not great.
It doesn't look that great, man.
It's
no,
flat. All the colors are kind of missing, and there's bad transfer. You know, when the Ankylosaurus walks past, you know how that's quite a dark scene anyway, but you can pick out the colors. You can't see the Ankylosaurus in the 4K transfer.
Can I say something controversial? I have the 4K. That's what I watched last night, and I have a really good TV too. It's not that I have a bad TV, but watching it on 4K makes the movie feel more like it makes it look more like a TV movie. If that makes sense, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a bad transfer.
It makes the sets feel more like sets. Like you can distinctly tell, like all those things that are running. Like, oh, it's the same. Like it's a set. Versus
it's funny
when you're
that
outside.
you say that because I always had that issue with the movie. That was one of my other issues. Is it felt a little bit more synthetic to me. And I didn't know when I saw it that it was not like most of the scenes weren't real jungle, but it always felt like a little faker to me.
It's definitely easier to tell now. I don't think it's aged well. That a specific effect.
It's an impressive set. It's an impressive
it's a great set. They put a lot of money and effort into it behind the scenes. If you watch those, it's very.
If they had more time, I think they could have shot that set fantastically. I don't think it's any fault of the set. I don't think it's any fault of that direction. I think it came down to the very forced production schedule and then basically being forced to just like kind of get a camera out there and shoot it. I think
They
that
said as well, a lot of the stuff that they had planned to film in the jungles of Hawaii, they ended up having to film in jungles in the studios in California. So you have to imagine they were like, well, we've filmed everywhere on stage 12. I guess we'll move a few trees around, change the angle, change the lights, and go again.
That's a lot of what it felt like last night.
Yeah.
Now that we're speaking of the production, do you think we should just shuffle right into the pre-production of this movie?
Well, I think there's still a lot to talk about with JP3 that I think is worth.
You want to do more overview of JP3? Holy moly, this movie is like this episode's gonna be longer than the movie.
That's not hard.
Okay, let's get real here. Birdcage scene, let's talk about it right now. If you want to get it off the bat, this is my favorite scene of the entire franchise. I don't care what anyone says. It beats anything in Jurassic Park for me. The music, the sets itself, the build up to the Pteranodon reveal, very horror. That's number one for me. I think that's, and the action and the music peaks when Billy gets dropped into the water. It's fantastic. I think it's number one, 10 on 10. That's all I have to say. It's my TED Talk.
Themselves, the Pteranodon VFX were just
peak.
And they still, JP3 doesn't, the VFX in JP3 hasn't aged poorly at all. It's really up there in like its quality.
It doesn't get talked about enough.
Pteranodons are like the best in that film, I would say.
They put all their money into that specific set, that sequence especially when they built that whole wall outside that Universal Studios, like that 90 foot or whatever it was, that giant like rock, like hats off Universal. We need to see more of that in the next Jurassic Park.
Yeah, the set,
but more small scale, if that makes sense.
The birdcage sequence I think is so cool as well because, sure, we've seen jungles before. We've seen them in the first two movies. And while this was even a different style of jungle, seeing it in a different time and a different place, seeing like the birdcage, seeing some of InGen's unseen facilities like that, such a great, just really fun. It kind of built and expanded what InGen had done. Here's a question for you. Now, we know that InGen left the island before the Lost World, before 97, because of the hurricane, right? So Lost World, when we see the island, it was abandoned anyway. But in Jurassic Park 3, the InGen logo is different on some of the products, right? It's a new logo. It's different. We've never seen that logo before. You know the one I'm talking about. It's on like the lamp that Eric has and stuff. Did InGen go back and breed things like the Spinosaurus after the events of the Lost World?
Don't we know how the Spinosaurus was made now that the behind the scenes for like the extra Jurassic World materials come out? Like it was like Ms. Ronnie's group or something. Wasn't that?
Well, I think that's just online.
It's lightly implied, but it's not defined. That is a potential answer. But I think
it would have been short-lived then.
But what we see in the movie, specifically going even off of Grant's quotes, makes me wonder what else InGen is up to. Mm-hmm. It is implied this is an InGen thing. I think that we can presume that it is InGen who did it. When they did it, hard to say. Was it after the events of the Lost World? I don't know.
But that's what I'm saying, because I know that this is such a small thing, but the InGen logo changing. It just feels to me like they did go back, and some of the the water truck that Eric was in, which had all those products that had that new logo in, makes you think, well, maybe they did go back, and maybe for some reason they'd had a bit of a rebrand.
When did Masrani buy InGen from Hammond? Was it after he died in 97? Let's
not talk about Masrani. I don't think.
Well, you gotta though. It counts, I don't think though. That's like the official. We gotta consider it though. We have to consider
I don't think
it.
They were there until 2005. Let's just ignore it. The events in JP3 had nothing to do with Masrani.
No, they didn't. They didn't.
1998.
But they didn't. That's just online.
1998.
So if they did go back in 98, what made them leave again?
The Spino got out, and they were like, scared them.
That wouldn't be enough. If it's another... See, that's the thing. We need more story. I don't also know why there's no stories filling in this rich backstory between, like, 97 to 2001, 2005. Where is that content?
So empty, and I don't think any online, Masrani website really fills it in for me, because it's not in the movies. It's not written. It's not
canon.
It's not even said in the movies.
Yeah,
no, I think it has to be said. I think you're right. If it's in the movies,
you don't even see the Maserati logo in the movies. Although they were going to show it in Fallen Kingdom, and then that scene got cut, but they did build the logo, and they had like a
Fallen
little.
Kingdom and Jurassic World trilogies. It's like a
But
whole bunch of what could have
we
been.
could go on for ages about the disappointments of that. So with
We'll talk about the disappointments of JP3 instead.
I think InGen did go back for whatever reason. It could have just been Wu. It could have been some other scientists. They could have been doing something to try and, after the events of Lost World, their public image was even worse. They were out of money. Maybe they were like, look, there's a way to get some more money, some cash. So they went and breed some more dinosaurs. I don't know. But the logo always stands out to me as something,
it could have even happened.
Because
could have happened in tandem with the events of the Lost World. Even for the Spinosaurus to grow to full adulthood, it probably was on that island for a decent chunk of time. So yeah, it's hard to say. I think that's the fascinating part, is it does build some mysteries, and I do think it's a bummer that the movies never really explored some of those mysteries, because the heavy implication was InGen was up to some shit.
Yeah.
I suppose you could start to say, oh, well, the new park, but I don't even think the new park started, even if we're saying Masrani as like a company bought it. I don't think they started development of the new park at that time period.
Plus, all of that stuff was written plus a decade past Jurassic Park 3. If we're just thinking about what happens in the movie when he says that, none of that could have been written yet. So
even based off movie context, I would say it's just a part of the old InGen, and there's no like new InGen. I think it's just, how like companies can have different logos. Like even at my workplace, like our official logo is stapled all over the place, but we also have alternate logos that are kind of the same but slightly different, which are also plastered all over
different periods of time. So it makes you think, well, okay, they went back for another mission. Maybe they just went back to regroup some stuff. They took some supplies with them.
Thing, Jack.
They slapped on the new logo.
All the stuff in the Lost World that we saw was from like say 1992 to 95, and then all this JP3 building stuff was built like 97, just before the hurricane hit. So it's like kind of newer, slightly different. Bingo bango. We're
canon
here,
now,
folks.
That is canon now. Okay,
write this in. Talk to the directors.
We'll put this in Jurassic World Revealed, and
put this on Beyond the Gates. Get this said.
Let's talk about the Spinosaurus. I want to talk about that because that's one that change that gives. I'm struggling for words here, but that splits a lot of people.
Well, let's talk about
a very controversial question.
How it started.
Go for it.
Sure. As a baryonyx.
Yes, it did. Yes, there's even a logo of it.
There's a logo, and in some of the early pieces of concept art / storyboards, it was a baryonyx. But they wanted something that was bigger than a T-Rex, so they shifted to the Spinosaurus. Saying the baryonyx is larger than T-Rex was a very weird thing to do, so they probably went, hey, there's something that looks like the baryonyx. It's got a crazy sail on it also, so that makes it even more unique, and it was very, very big. So
as a kid,
wasn't it Jack Horner
this was my favorite.
Jack Horner suggested
it was Jack Horner.
Yeah.
So wasn't there a trailer or a teaser or something that had the baryonyx in the logo?
Yeah, and there's some early merchandise, Jurassic Park Extinction merchandise.
Oh, there was a water.
We'll get to that.
It's on eBay. A water.
I've got all the old posters up here. I love them, but I'm thinking more like I swear there's something with the baryonyx logo that I can't find that though.
Yeah, there were a few little things here and there.
But what do you think about the Spinosaurus?
I liked it. As a kid, this was my favorite dinosaur. I wanted all the toys of it. I got when I was a kid, my favorite toy, JP or anything JP or otherwise, was the big giant rubber Spino, the posable one. I loved the hell out of that thing. And then now that science has revealed what the Spinosaur really kind of might have looked like, you know what? Spinosaur, not as cool, but that design, still number one.
Yeah, you have to admit the way the Spinosaurus does look.
It's kind of like a big crocodile with a sail. Don't get me wrong, still dope and cool, but it's no longer my favorite dinosaur. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
I mean, as a design, I think it's a really, really good design in the movie. I wasn't the biggest fan of the Spinosaurus because it went full monster mode. Like, it went full slasher, just sort of like trying to kill everyone constantly, hunting them down. So I didn't love that about the Spinosaurus. But as a design, as a dinosaur, it's a cool dinosaur, a cool design. Yeah, I'm a fan of the Spinosaurus design, and despite it going full monster with like its behavior, I think the design, despite being a little bit of the design being like a little amplified, I think it still looks naturalistic enough to fit within like the Jurassic films, and that's what I do dig about it. And it's got a really good color scheme. The animatronic sometimes was a little hit and miss. Even though it was the most complex animatronic ever built, it felt like it was probably down to the timeline and the way they had to film it. It felt like a big robot just sort of bumbling around with its big slow
It was
claws.
very stiff.
Yeah, and I think that comes down to the rush timeline with the cinematography.
But with the rush, this I want to say just really quickly, the performance of the Spinosaur in the water at the end is some of the best Jurassic cinematography, I think, in the entire franchise.
No,
Agreed. Yeah, the whole fire lake sequence is fantastic. But one thing I was going to say is after the plane crash sequence, because all we hear is we hear the Spinosaurus, and obviously it sounds.
I love the reveal. Oh god!
But the reveal,
music and
right?
everything. Jesus.
Cooper, the plane. You get one split shot of it.
He's a professional.
Like,
he can handle himself.
What the hell is that? That's huge. The plane crashes. Boom. We haven't landed yet. They go through that, and then every shot from that point forward, from the plane crashing to the ground to them scrambling out, you don't get a full body shot of the Spino. It's shot really well. You get a shot of the arms when it rolls the plane over. You get the foot when it stomps in front of the plane. You get the eyes. They handle it really well. It's a very slow reveal to actually show you the entire thing in one shot. And even when it is one shot, it's through the window. It's kind of, faded.
It's kind of hard to see.
And there's a lot of
quick glimpses.
Yeah, it is a good sequence. That I think I remember Spielberg said he was jealous of the plane crash sequence, and
it's a great sequence.
Not as good as the main road sequence or anything, but it is a cool sequence, and it's
better than the trailer sequence. I think, right?
What'd you say?
No,
is it?
No, it's not better than the trailer sequence. The cinematography.
Nothing in JP3 is better than The Lost World.
Yeah, and a lot of that comes down to
my god.
The concept of the plane crash is great. A lot of the execution of the concept was both good and bad. The bad was usually the cinematography. The good was the way that they tried to do the reveals and slowly pace it. But it does have that TV movie look, like you said. And I think that the thing that holds it back, again, I don't think that's a reflection of the talent behind the cinematography as much as the timeline forcing that version of the changed script to sort of like, well, we got to figure out how to make this work real quick. It could be a great sequence. It's an okay sequence with a really great concept, in my opinion.
I wonder how that group that was my question. You know what? How did they even I just don't understand the whole blocking of how that happens. You know what I mean? Does the Spinosaur sneak up on them, or they just walk into the Spinosaur and they fire off some shots at it? You see that? If you watch, I watched it yesterday. I noticed this yesterday. They fire off like 3 or 4 rounds at the dinosaur, and then it roars at them. So do they see it, shoot at it, and does it survive? That adds to the menace in my head. I was like, you know what? It was so cool to me yesterday, and I was also a little bit enhanced.
How did Cooper get injured? How on earth did he get injured by the Spinosaurus and run away from it?
They should have been filming this. I would have loved to have seen.
Maybe shot him by accident. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe
they shot at him by accident.
Friendly fire. Or
he's like, get on the plane. We got to leave Cooper because I shot the fuck out of him.
Yeah, get on the plane. We got to do not let Cooper on this plane. He's going to murder me.
Yeah.
Remember the murderer plot? The before they cut it, there was a murderer on the group on the island with them, right? Wasn't that the entire subplot? You guys remember this? In JP3, there was I know I've heard this on Dan's JP3 page. Maybe it was a rumor.
Page.
So
that might have been a rumor.
But rumor or not, it was like there was a murderer within the group on the island with them. It was really intense. I'm like,
was it Malcolm after he broke his leg?
Listen, we'll talk about Malcolm in future episodes. We'll have a lot to say about Malcolm. I'm hoping you guys reveal some secrets about Malcolm in the future movies.
Professional, he can handle himself.
Oh yeah, I want Malcolm the Professional. Could have been Jurassic World.
I don't know where this is from. I swear this might be from one of the evolution intros. But wasn't there a baby Spino that the idea was that Cooper may have stumbled into the Spino's nest? There was a baby Spino that attacked Cooper, and then the big mama Spino Or
I
pump.
don't
I've definitely
recall
read
Spino
something
looking.
about animatronic baby Spino at some point
Yeah, but there were
on
a lot
Dan's
of
E3 page.
there were
Shout out.
as
And
many
Dude, that stuff is gospel.
rumors,
That's the gospel.
as many good rumors and good reports there were a lot of things that weren't true. Um,
But we don't know what was and what wasn't, though. We don't know.
no, but nothing has ever surfaced. And that's not to say that it can't be true, but nothing has ever surfaced to suggest like that's not anything that's recapped in any of the early scripts that are out there, or the visual history
I
book, or
don't
like
know.
anything that's standing. There's no like Crash McCreary artwork of a
no,
baby.
but let's think about
That's
the
a good point.
logistics
It's not
of
art.
what Assis said. How did Cooper get attacked? And then because he was pretty banged up, he'd lost his gun as well at this point. So the Spino
And they did shoot at it, and they were all armed.
Yeah.
What was going on? I'm just talking about the
They're aiming
horrible writing.
Shot Cooper.
Yeah. The writing said, "Come back injured. Something happened. They got attacked.
I
Shot.
We gotta get to the next sequence." That's all it was.
It ricocheted back and smacked him.
yeah, maybe they were shooting at it thinking it will go away. It turned around and just like whipped him. Could have whipped him.
All that stuff adds to the lore, though. You know what I'm talking about? Like that's the entire point of the question, I guess. Like all these little minute details is what I care about so much. I don't do this for the Lost World. I don't do it for like Jurassic Park or any of the Lost World or the Jurassic World movies. I only do this for Jurassic Park 3. I want to like go inside that little shed at the side of the stupid thing. When Lego Jurassic Park came out, Jurassic World the game, sorry, the Lego one, when you got to play the Jurassic Park 3 segment and you were like exploring every little nook and cranny,
That
I
was
took my
fun.
time to go to every single corner, every single grid square I could to make sure
That was
I
fun to try and find the
explore the
answers.
island.
See if they put it in the Lego game.
Like,
you never
they-
know, man.
did they get a finished script?
No, I do like
That's
that
what I
though. That
wanna
whole
know.
build up to that scene, you know, you the mystery of like what was it? You don't know because you didn't see it, you just heard it. I do like that. That's fun, even though it was probably because they didn't know what to write. But let's kind of rewind a little bit. What happened to the boat that they were paragliding from or parasailing or whatever?
Yeah,
script.
what happened there?
Yeah.
Well,
What
As
happened
there
to them?
was commentary, the guys
bad
were
writing happened.
into this are
They
like
just
bad
died.
writing the script.
They get attacked.
But
There's
what do we think
George
it was?
Lucas
The
writing.
theory was could be pteranodons, but obviously they hadn't been let out yet. But like that's kind of makes more sense than it being the Spinosaurus. But
It was very far away from the island.
very
Like,
far away from
water-wise?
the island, and if it was the Spinosaurus, the boat never stopped moving is the problem. So it had to be something small that could have either landed on or jumped on the boat. At this point, let's just say that there was some sort of small semi-aquatic animal that we
Marlin came,
never
beached
saw,
itself,
and it
stabbed
just,
everyone.
you know what? It's the Camp Cretaceous Nothosaurus.
I mean,
That would species would make sense. It could jump on the boat, fuck some people up, and jump off the boat. I don't know. That's another.
There were, look, to be honest though, there were pteranodons. You've seen the end of the Lost World. There was that species of pteranodon. The I like to call them the lowland pteranodons.
inland.
Inland pteranodons. But for real though, like it could have been them because they
It
could
most
fly
likely
into the
was in
swarm,
this case.
heck the shit out of them enough to knock them out the boat. Even that guy's probably still alive in the water.
Yeah, he's like, ah, where's the boat?
They're probably fishing, close enough to the water to get fish, I guess, and then the boat comes by and they hop on the boat, grab the guys, and just leave, I guess.
Eric
That's my
and
best guess.
Ben
Hildebrand.
Ben
There's
Hildebrand.
also
Eric
no roaring, too.
have seen pteranodons flying in and flying out, unless
Yeah, but
we're-
if you remember that whole
It was a
area is
fog
completely cloud covered. It's like
And you know what the Pteranodons like from the movie later on? Fog.
That's true.
Yeah.
They do like fog,
They were
even
in
though they were
fog.
stuck in the cage.
yeah,
Horrible writing.
yeah, it was the byproduct of a evolving script that they needed something to happen and never quite figured out the logic to get it there.
But
I
as
mean-
an 8-year-old boy, that was cool as hell. Seeing that bloody boat.
I hated it. I
That
was
one bothered me as a kid.
You were
too,
a
I won't lie.
9-year-old boy. It's different. I was an 8-year-old boy.
As a 7-year-old, I also didn't like it, Chris. I was just like, why not just show it? Why not just tell us? What
I
it
was just like, nothing
It's
makes
sweet
sense
spot.
here. I don't know. My favorite answer is it's something that we never actually saw or heard of because the popular
Great
answers
white
of Pteranodons and Spinosaurus don't really gel very well with like the logic. But there are things that could have happened, and if you just look at the lens of InGen was up to a lot of things, and we don't know everything they did, and that's a dangerous place. Then okay, the 5 deaths. bad things happen around the 5 deaths to fishermen. So something's been picking out fishermen off the boats. I don't know. I'd like to imagine.
Man, they should make a movie about that. That's almost cooler than the future
Yeah.
of
Or
Jurassic
imagine if it
World
was
4.
nothing then. Imagine if just the guy who was on the boat with the I forget he does have a character name, but I forget,
Enrique? No, that's from
Enrique
Lost
maybe.
World.
Yeah. Maybe the other guy was like really just
Maybe that's where the murderer was.
he was the
Maybe,
murderer.
man.
Yeah.
Maybe they filmed it and cut it in post. I don't know. All I'm saying is someone else. You know what? If you guys are listening to this and you've heard that too, back me up. Let them know.
You know what it
Let
was?
Chris
The
back me up.
Brackmeers.
I think I'm pretty up to date with my JP3 knowledge, and I'm pretty sure I read that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an answer that I don't think we'll ever have an answer to, or a question that we won't ever have an answer to, and it's best not to overthink it because
We should just forget about this topic and just get into the pre-production now, because we're just talking about pre-production anyways.
Yeah.
sort of.
You did mention the spine. You did mention how you like the river sequence with the Spinosaurus and the flames, and we have to say, right, the embryonics administration scene. I love that sequence. It's short-lived. It was meant to be a lot longer, but what they did include, again, as a kid, when the raptor runs past, when they just enter the building.
That's a great shot.
That's so good.
Creepy stuff.
It's so quick, you're not expecting it, and you're like, well, shit's gonna go down.
Blink and you miss the type of stuff.
The fake out with Amanda
That
Kirby,
little
I know
music
that
twirl.
I know that gets people. Yeah, that music, that thing,
Brilliant.
that sound. Yeah, brilliant. The fake out with the raptor, it is a bit silly, but it is cool. I like the fake out because she's staring at it like, and you're thinking in her head, she's probably, how is that even in there? And then it just twitch.
The reason why I don't like it is it's a fun idea. It's that it just makes the characters too dumb. It's like it's not that I can't buy the raptor doing that. I can buy the raptor. They're ambushing. It just makes it's just like that monster movie trope where the characters are super super dumb to like sell thrilling plot moments. But it's a cool thing for the raptor to do. I just wish it was done in a way where I'm not like, you are so dumb. What are you doing? Because that's sort of what I was feeling with half of these characters in that movie, where I'm like, what is their problem? Why are they like this? How have they survived a world without dinosaurs? And how are they going to get to the end of this movie?
Let's talk about the characters real quick then. Amanda Kirby, even forget about just dinosaurs on the island. Even if you were in any jungle, I guess you would scream for bears. But if you were in like a tropical jungle, I don't think I'd be screaming, that loud. I don't want to get attacked by no random animal, let alone a dinosaur.
The script that is online, she's a lot smarter.
Why did they just get? I guess time. They didn't want to write a smart character.
They took most of her lines and then like gave them to Eric, like they repurposed them to Eric. But in the version of the script that's like 90% the movie that we got that's available online, she is far more intelligent and actually has like a purpose. And I do think like I guess they wanted to give Eric in that version of the script was like had PTSD, and I think they were afraid
that was dark.
That they're like, that's too heavy. So then they took all of Amanda's stuff and gave it to Eric, and then they're like, let's just make Amanda really dumb and annoying.
Yeah, I mean, she
which doesn't serve the movie
pretty quickly. I think when the raptors, that's another scare with Tom Udesky's death. When that was like, he's not dead.
Tom Udesky.
Tom Udesky's dead.
Tom Udesky.
Where Amanda's like, we have to help him. No, it's Paul that says that. Paul Kirby's like, we have to help him, and Amanda starts climbing down the tree, and then she falls and slips, and the raptors jump up. That whole sequence is great, but I think that was a proper wake up call to her. That whole sequence,
What's funny? For the longest time, I didn't understand like what was going on the ground at that point. Like, I didn't understand if Udesky was. I didn't understand he was alive until I think I was maybe 17 or 18. Like, I didn't understand what was going on. I thought they were like somehow moving his like. I don't know, man. I was a stupid kid back then. I wasn't thinking too much about
nerves.
It. And then someone said like they left him somewhat alive. I'm like, oh, that's what happened. That makes a lot more sense.
They had a sequence where there's obviously a infamous deleted scene with Udesky. We don't know if they filmed it, but where he grabs a stick and fights.
There's a picture of it online. Yes, you can easily
there's
find it.
There's a picture of him holding the stick. Yeah,
Udesky with stick.
Udesky with stick. Yeah, we were telling Mattel they need to make that toy. Udesky with
No, that's such a you know
big
what
wooden
that
stick.
it. I want to know where the extended cut of JP3 is. I know it exists. They filmed more than just those bare. I know there's like I know the movie like what 92 minutes. I think there's a
With
100-minute movie
credits.
out there somewhere. Give me a 100-minute movie.
I'm sure there's more character moments, but I can't imagine there's much more in terms
You
of
know
like.
what? Even I would even take them just walking quietly in the jungle, just for me to enjoy it. You know what I mean? Just a little bit of breathing space in between the running in between dinosaurs.
Yeah, well, yeah, it would have probably just been more screaming and yelling and weird quips, but at the same time, I would like to see what they shot. Whatever it is that didn't make it, but we also know that a lot of the things that were supposed to be in the movie just ultimately didn't get filmed. It's not that they cut them out in post production; it's that they ran out of money in production and then just didn't film them. So
I th- I think at one point I also read a shout out to Dan's JP3 page. That's where I read it. But I think I also read at one point they were like they were writing the script the day before they were filming it or some
oh
point. Like I
yeah,
think
yeah, yeah, no,
even
that
Sam
is,
Neill was writing the script at some points, wasn't he not in his hotel room or something
yeah,
crazy?
literally like all the cast members were like
Well,
turning
like
in pieces of
then
the
you like
script.
then you think if you then you look at the dialogue that we have, it's like nope, like it's a wonder they got anything going at all. You know, it's a wonder this movie as came out as solidly produced as it did,
That
regardless
movie,
of what you think of it.
it definitely Jurassic Park 3 would be a very different animal if it were simply delayed and allowed to develop the script a bit further, because it needed it.
But
And
that was a
everyone,
different time though, too, in Hollywood, right? You wouldn't. I don't think things were delayed that often,
I think
if
things
ever,
were
right?
I think things were allowed to be delayed a lot more back then than they are
Really,
now.
because isn't the article we were talking about this before we started recording? Because I thought that Kathleen Kennedy had wanted to at one point cancel JP3. Then you guys were telling me that she didn't even want to delay it, and she said, "No, we're
She's the
just going
one
to
that
keep
made the
going."
call that they spent too much money, that they needed to go forward with it for the studio. But ultimately, I think that the better call would have been take some of those losses, delay, and then shoot in a few months or something like that, or even a year later, ultimately because of shooting schedules and whatnot. But delays come with consequences. Sometimes certain actors that were supposed to play a role, well, they got another movie next year. So if you delay it, that means that you might have to recast some of your characters and whatnot.
I
So
mean, let's
delays
be real
definitely are
here.
a big decision, but
I there must have been more to it because like if it was just based solely off casting, like, pretty much everyone is replaceable except for Sam Neill. Like you can literally replace anyone with like they're good actors, but like you know what I mean? Like they can
if
get replaced
down
by
to, I think
anyone
you
else.
still have to pay them a little bit.
Oh,
If
then maybe I don't know the behind
yeah,
the scenes of all that.
it just delays do have costs. There's no doubt about that. Making a decision to delay a movie when you're moments away from filming basically is going to cost a pretty penny. It's going to
And do
cost.
you think the result movie, and like what? I guess how do I rephrase my question? What do you think caused the end box office results of this movie because they were significantly lower than The Lost World. Do you think it's just franchise fatigue? Because we've seen it with this series of Jurassic World films too, each one dropping by like 300 million, and this is what happened with the first set of films too.
Sure. I mean, I think franchise fatigue plays a part. I think the reviews of the movie also played a part. And I think also, I think people caught on pretty quickly that the scope of this movie was not nearly as large. So I think it was just less interesting. The movie was a rescue mission. It had no grander story to tell. It had no larger like sub themes or elements. So I just don't think it was the most compelling of movies. It just, I mean, even the cinematography, like if you look at the trailers of it, it just is not as nice looking as the trailers for Jurassic
It
Park.
really does feel like I hate saying this about the movie, but it honestly just feels like a product, if that makes sense. Just like kind of like Jurassic World movies, but they feel more commercialized somehow. But Jurassic Park 3 just feels like that mid 2000s sequel product movie, like Men in Black 2 and 3. Even
Mhm.
though 3 came out a bit later, but that type of ilk, like The Mummy 2, Mummy 3, even though that came out later too. But those like mid to late 2000s, just product, get it out there, cash in on the brand kind of
But
Yeah,
that's
films.
what's
And
sad
it's kind
about
of
it because
sad.
it wasn't supposed to be that. It wasn't supposed to
But
come out.
I think that because they went this trajectory with Jurassic Park 3 and not delaying it,
it became
they've
that when they
kind of
did not delay it.
it it became a commercial product. It
It
just
became
became a commercial product.
the studio invested a lot of money into this, and they need this tent pole by this time, so
Mhm.
you have to go ahead and make it. Yeah, it became that type of film, even though that's not what it was like started out as.
And when you get those type of movies, and there's I know everyone involved's passionate, but there's like a certain level of passion that's missing almost when you have to get just
Oh yeah,
made to get forced to make a product that you don't really want to have that like your name tied to anymore. Like I remember shortly after the movie came out, they're like, "Do you want to come back for Jurassic Park 4?" to some of the actors. They're like, "No, hell no."
Yeah,
And Alessandro
guy
Nivola
played
is like,
Billy,
"Fuck no." He's
Billy
like, "I only
Brennan.
liked it because like Grant or like Samuel was like playing ukulele to keep the morale high because morale
yeah.
was low."
Like
I was like,
Sam Neill's
"I
the other
wouldn't come
thing I have
back,
to say.
even though we're contracted. I don't want to come back." I was like, "Oh, it was so sad to read as a
It's a
kid."
real shame. I wonder if that was a bit of a reason that Kathleen Kennedy ended up not coming back for Jurassic Park 4. I know that by that time by the time they ended up doing Jurassic World,
Yeah,
she was
Lucasfilm.
already with Star Wars. But, very early on, Frank Marshall, like 2002, 2003, Frank Marshall was taking on the lead of Jurassic Park 4. I do find that quite interesting.
2005 was going to come out, man.
I wonder
Well,
if
Kathleen Kennedy was still very much in the discussions and very
she
much.
was involved, but Frank had come in at like very early on in Jurassic Park 4's production. It makes you wonder if she'd been like,
Frank almost took over for her. You know what I mean? Like behind the scenes without announcing it.
he
When he
was he
kind
was
of
the
like,
only one that was
how
really
did he
talking
become?
about it.
Yeah, remember how he almost like somehow just became the producer of the franchise, even though he never produced any of them.
Yeah,
Everyone
Remember,
just started asking him about JP4 for some reason.
yeah,
It was
yeah,
so
remember when
strange.
Frank
Like,
used to
why?
be Patty online? The early days of Twitter, before Twitter became what Twitter has become over the past however many years. It's been a slow decline, long before Musk, even after Musk as well. But like, uh, Twitter's Twitter used to it inspired a lot more candidacy in those like 2013, 2012 eras where Frank would
Jack would always talk to Frank Marshall
yeah,
on Twitter and get some big. I was literally when we were researching for that episode, I literally went to a Deadline article and it linked to a interaction with Frank Marshall about Kathleen Kennedy not coming back, and who was it
yeah.
linked the tweet to?
She
To
replied to
Jack
me and was
Delamar.
like, "No, she's traded in Raptors for Tie Fighters or
That's
something."
it. That's the quote,
Yeah,
baby.
yeah.
That's
Frank
Jack
used to
Delamar caused
respond.
it.
Frank
I don't
used
think he's
to
even on
be
Twitter
pretty good at
anymore.
responding to stuff. He used to respond to people about Indiana Jones 4 back in the day as well. With
Mhm.
is it the Bermuda Triangle? And he'd be like, no, things like that. I think that was pretty cool. But yeah, there was. I wonder if what happened with Jurassic Park 3 and with Kathleen deciding not to delay it, give them extra time or anything, and then the movie ended up not making as much money, not,
Killing the
I guess,
franchise for a
critically
while.
not being as good. I wonder if it made her want to step back from the franchise.
Um,
I don't know,
Perhaps,
man.
although I think if she didn't take on Star Wars and Lucasfilm, I imagine she would have probably been producing as the lead producer, probably alongside Frank, but the lead
Even if
producer.
she didn't want to, she might have just done it as a favor to Spielberg because they're always so just they're like this, they're very tight. So
Mm.
I'd imagine she'd just be, if not, she'd just be an executive. I imagine you know what? Once she's done her role as Lucasfilm president or whatever she is now, I imagine that she'll. Sorry, for those who can't see, which is everyone, I guess. I'm being swarmed by my cats. So this is
There it
you
is.
guys take over. I'm actually being swarmed.
Yeah,
This is
Cease is
pretty
being
funny.
swarmed by cats. He was holding one, then another one came out of
They
nowhere.
both just keep going up to the microphone for some reason and then like turning into it.
I want to be part of
Yeah,
it.
it's ridiculous. Cats are too much. What was I saying? Oh, yeah, Kathleen. Yeah, so I think I think without I don't want to. I will say something controversial. I don't want a Jurassic Park movie that doesn't have the name Steven Spielberg or Kathleen Kennedy or Frank Marshall tied to it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if the original creators aren't attached to it in some sort of artificial way, even it almost doesn't feel like an official product. It almost feels fan fiction. You know what I mean? Like
I
that's
get what
why
you're
I don't like the new
saying.
Star Wars movies because they don't feel like they just feel like off movies. I just don't know how to describe it
I get what
because
you're
they're not
saying.
George Lucas.
Although I do feel like Spielberg's involvement with the Jurassic World movies probably didn't really. Did it mean much? I don't feel like.
Probably not, but it's nice to see when I pop it in the screen.
Okay, yeah. I don't know. I know what you're saying. I agree with that. I found it weird initially that Kathleen wasn't involved with the Jurassic World movies because I thought she was such a great asset on the original three. Um, Yeah, but Frank filled in the gaps. Frank got the job done.
But
And
you
Pat
know what?
Crowley, right? His Born
As I,
Supremacy.
oh yeah, Pat Crowley is producing buddy there. You know what's funny? Look at the
Bro.
quality of the Jason Bourne movies. Look what happened. They made that one stinker. They made those two stinkers, and now the franchise is dead. I don't think Frank Marshall. I was gonna say Frank Marshall. Maybe his pedigree was more prime time back in the day. Now, not so much because he's been making a lot of misses these days. So maybe having him back, not a great idea. And same with Kathleen Kennedy. The Star Wars movies are kind of a mess. The whole Star Wars and Lucasfilm is kind of a mess too. So I don't think
Yeah,
we'd
and
want them back. Maybe
while
fresh
they're
blood would
obviously
be
top of their game producers, I feel as though Frank now is kind of the studio producer. He got the job done. It was less about how creative and maybe thought provoking the movies were, and more about the box
on
office.
budget.
Yeah,
Is it on
got it on
budget?
budget.
Here's the
Got it
thing:
all.
his movies aren't making money anymore either. Indiana Jones, Jason Bourne, aside from Jurassic, his things aren't really making gangbusters anymore. You know what I mean? Like he made hits back in the day, but I don't know. I think you're right, Jack. I think he's just kind of by the books, by the numbers, and I think Jurassic needs something. I don't know how to say it. It's not a little bit
Needs a
different, but
passionate producer, very passionate producer.
here's the thing, though. Colin, we thought was a passionate producer at one point too, and director as well. But you know, I don't know I don't know who we need at this point. I honestly don't know if Jurassic has a perfect director out there. We might have to wait a while till one of the young guns, grow up and take the helm. Jack, hurry up.
Well, we can maybe discuss that in a future ep. I think we should discuss what Jurassic Park 3 could have been. Thanks to scripts that have come out, and thanks to, never thought I'd say this, but thanks to the Ultimate Visual History book, we have a better insight into what Jurassic Park 3 was supposed to be. And the script that Joe Johnston, ripped up, threw away, was finally unveiled a little bit in the Ultimate Visual History Guide. So I think we should talk a little bit about that. And preface by saying, at this point, the movie was most likely still going to be called Jurassic Park 3 Extinction or Breakout. They were toying with both names.
Yes.
And after reading the book, I think Breakout, makes a little bit more sense. But you know what? Extinction, to a lesser degree, but also makes sense. But I think Jurassic Park 3 Breakout would have been cool.
Well, it makes you wonder where Extinction came from, because the screenplays
Extinction
don't really indicate.
from mankind, from dinosaurs,
We're getting ahead of ourselves here, but that moment at the end of that screenplay with the military, that was supposed to be Extinction, but then they felt like it was a fake out because it doesn't actually end that way, so they dropped the title. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. So at the beginning, first we have to rewind back to the production of The Lost World. During the beginning of filming The Lost World, Steven Spielberg always intended to direct Jurassic Park 3. He constantly wanted to direct Jurassic Park 3, and he always had one very core idea of Jurassic Park 3. The dinosaurs will be getting off the island, like in Michael Crichton's books, into Costa Rica and whatnot. So that was something that he really wanted to explore. As he was filming The Lost World, he came to a realization that he did not want to be caught up doing sequels. He wanted to focus on original movies. So he came to the determination that he would not be directing Jurassic Park 3 while filming The Lost World. That caused him to throw away the ending of The Lost World because he wanted his chance to film a sequence of dinosaurs on mainland. So he changed the ending of The Lost World to have the T-Rex San Diego sequence because he was no longer going to do Jurassic Park 3. So, flash forward. Joe Johnston had asked a long time before The Lost World, can I direct the next one? Steven said, hey, I'm doing it, but if I ever step away, you're my first ask. So when Steven decided he was no longer directing the movie, he went to Joe Johnston. When he went to Joe Johnston, he only had two very strong determinations. Well, three, I should say. Mainland story, in part. He wanted the Pteranodons to play a big part, which is why, when we talk about the Pteranodon sequence feeling so great and refined, well, it was literally one of the first ideas. One of the few
it was planned from the beginning.
One of the few things that stuck around through many iterations. And then the third thing, which ultimately did not make the cut, Steven's big idea was he wanted Dr. Grant on the island, living on the island, studying the dinosaurs.
Good
And
call not doing that.
that idea continued to evolve until eventually it just got dropped entirely. Um, but
It's
it
not
was
Jurassic Park. It's craziness.
so those were the three, and then they wanted a new dinosaur. They wanted a new big bad. They wanted something to replace the T-Rex. Started with the Baryonyx, became the Spinosaurus. We talked about that earlier.
Mhm.
But anyhow, Jack, did you want to take a little bit from there from the development?
Sure. So I'm not sure exactly what to say, but there were a few iterations of the script. We know that when Joe Johnston joined the project, there was a screenplay that he immediately threw out, which he said read like an episode of Friends.
Yeah, that was from so there was the Craig Rosenberg
Rosenberg.
script, which was written in 1999. Rosenberg's story followed three families into two chartered airplanes, the adult passengers in one plane, kids in the other, on the way to the Galapagos Islands.
Crazy in itself.
The
Fun
kids
fact,
the kids
Craig
playing some.
Rosenberg is working on The Boys now.
Oh, interesting. Great show. The kids plane crashes to Isla Sorna somehow, sparking the kids discovering Alan Grant living on the island, Robinson Crusoe style, studying the dinosaurs.
Like, what is this? This is
Never would have worked.
Johnson said
gosh.
this: the script was unwieldy, overly
a good way to
complicated,
put it.
with too much teen angst and overly witty sitcom one-liners. There are too many characters and contrived dynamics between them that took away from the fun. Fortunately, no one liked it, so they threw it away. Then in December 1999, they brought in Peter Bookman. How do you say
I
it?
think it's Bookman,
Bookman,
I think so.
but I'm probably wrong.
and he still had the idea of the marooning, and it underwent quite a few changes, and that's when we got a very interesting story that laid the groundwork for the Jurassic Park 3 that we got, but it had some very other interesting elements.
Yeah, one of the main things we know is that the screenplay was kind of split down the middle. It wasn't exactly 50-50, but it was part on Isla Sorna and part on the mainland, which is, again, natural progression after the Lost World. It kind of needed to go in that direction. We didn't need... That was one of the faults with Jurassic 3, right? That critics had. Just another island running around, dinosaurs on an island. It didn't
People were ready
progress
for more.
enough in the kind of world building that needed to happen, but the screenplay did, and it should have. I feel like personally, I wish that really did happen. We would be in a very different position now, I feel, with the franchise. But anyway, we know that the kind of characters were Paul Roby, which ended up being Paul Kirby, was the wealthy businessman that funded Grant's digs, which is interesting. It kind of harkens back to Hammond being the dig funder and things like that. Eric was his son. No, Miles was his son.
Miles, yeah.
And yeah, I mean, they found ways to use the characters again, but they were completely different characters with different interests and different.
Paul was actually was wealthy. It was not a fake out.
Yeah.
There's a cachet attached to Miles.
They did not kidnap Grant. So the big thing is in Costa Rica. So Alan Grant wanted funding to study the dinosaurs on Isla Sorna himself, particularly the raptors. So he was looking for funding to do that. At the same time, there started becoming dinosaurs, corpses washing ashore in Costa Rica, and people being attacked. It says specifically like as far south as Panama, I believe. Basically, people are being attacked. There's a lot of incidents of dinosaur encounters on the mainland. The Costa Rican government is taking this very seriously, and the environmentalists in there are basically saying, hey, this isn't just our issue. This is the world's issue. These dinosaurs are breeding. While it might be isolated to our neck of the woods right now, it's going to become a problem. So there was a U.S. representative that was overseeing some of these things, and they came to Grant and said, hey, if you testify at this hearing and help us get like control of the island, we will let you be the person to, like, you could come on the island and study the dinosaurs. Grant agrees. At the same time, Miles says, hey, not Miles, Paul says, hey, we'll fund you. We just want you to, narrate our little flyover. So Grant says, okay, I'm already heading down that direction. Anyways, the flyover goes awry. They crash on the island, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, because Tom Udesky is too, look at the dinosaurs, not flying the plane. plane ends up hitting something, right? Hits a tree or something. Is that
Yeah,
right?
and it's like
You
forced
gotta
to
pay
look
attention when you fly. You gotta pay attention.
Yeah.
and it's basically then what was in the movie. The Spinosaurus attacks, the plane gets destroyed, during the crash.
They become stranded on the island, have to find a way off.
Yeah.
But there was something that they were trying to figure out, because Grant's the reason they think the raptors may have escaped the island or found a way off is because something drastic must have happened to their nest, or to the island, that made them not want to stay there anymore. Right? That's a part of it. That's a factor. So
Yeah, that one's not in the visual history book, but that's something that's been reported elsewhere. One of the big things in the visual history book that was in this version of the script is some of the most frequent attacks were pteranodons.
Right. Not sure what. Yeah.
I
What are you doing?
I don't know.
I was trying to remind Chris, back off the mic a little bit. You're coming in hot. Coming in real hot.
Oh yeah. Okay. Cool. That's.
I was not able to understand what you were doing there.
I was like, you look like
Chris
you
was
need
so
help,
in the
right?
story. He was getting. See, I don't believe this. This is the thing. Chris says he doesn't care for Jurassic Park 3, but he gets so into it like this. I refuse to believe this. He's putting on a show.
This
I
story's
guarantee it.
interesting. This story's the story we always wanted to get.
Well,
Even
this
in
is the story we got. This is half the story we got.
No. The whole mainland thing.
We'll get to it. We'll get to
Go
it.
back to the novels, and that's what kind of happens. The raptors. It's hinted that the raptors get off the island in the first novel, and that's something that people always wanted to see. As much as we saw a T-Rex in San Diego, that was nice and contained, and they managed to, haul its ass back to Sauna. But
San Diego has Marines. Where were the Marines during that whole incident?
Probably
They even came in on a boat.
Well, I mean, the animal control got called, so nobody was taking this idea seriously. At that point, people didn't believe dinosaurs were really de-extinct. So,
yeah,
that's a good point. I want to say one more thing. While we're talking about the whole thing, the world didn't believe the dinosaurs weren't de-extinct. I'm going to say something right now. People say that Jurassic Park 3 didn't push the world forward at all. I call bullshit.
No, that's true. I mean, after the events of the Lost World, though,
that's the Lost World that did that.
Yeah,
but it shows the effect. But Jurassic Park 3 shows like the effect of dinosaurs on the world now. Like Isla Sorna is now a restricted island. There's like a airplane patrolling the air at all times now, or whatever. And there's all those people in the auditorium to see Grant are only there for the Jurassic Park or Lost World story. It shows that the world is fascinated by the dinosaurs. And you get this weird story about Jurassic World. People aren't interested in dinosaurs no more. Get out of here.
Yeah.
Jurassic Park 3 that show that all they care about is like that incident and what
does
Grant
that guy
might know.
say when he asked the question in the movie, not in the screenplay that was chucked? He says something about once the Costa Rican government and the scientists figure out how to handle that second island, scientists will just go in for themselves, kind of thing. It's like everybody's aware.
You almost nailed it perfectly.
That this is real. Everybody's aware that this is happening now, that there's dinosaurs there. And I think that in itself is such a cool world building thing. But the original screenplay gave us even more of that. It gave us the guy that was in charge of the Costa Rican treaty.
That's a lot more world building, which I guess was just cut out because of timing. We just rushing the production. They just couldn't fit all of it in. Because let's be honest, the story that you guys are talking about easily could have been fit within the Jurassic Park 3 that we got. Like you could film those parts right now, today, and splice them in within the movie somehow, and I think it would work out decently.
Just ask AI to do it.
I'm sure Universal's already on it with some of the covers they're producing. I think they're already making.
This is why it bothers me. I'll never understand Joe Johnston purely saying, "Well, it was a bit complex." Come on, what was the real reason you chucked the screenplay? There has to be more.
This is the man who made Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Let's not forget this. Everyone.
He made October Sky. Come on, that's a great movie.
I mean, we talked about this earlier.
I'll go later on. What are you doing, dude?
What happened was they did not have a screenplay that was like paced out correctly, and because they weren't able to get a delay, by stripping out half of the movie and taking out the mainland plot and only focusing on the people stuck on the island, it was probably easier to get that done in the abbreviated amount of time. So I don't necessarily think he never said it was a bad script. It was just like, basically they didn't have the time to make that complex of a story, so they had to dumb it down and simplify it. But to the story recap, so like after the Spinosaurus attack, It flashes to the mainland, and we see that hearing that Grant was supposed to attend, which he's no longer attending because he's stranded on Isla Sorna. And basically, the hearing gets underway, and we start to hear about some of the attacks and the problems that are happening on the mainland. You go back to the Grant and Co. They end up in the Embryonics Administration. But they stay overnight at the Embryonics Administration and have multiple encounters with velociraptors throughout that nightly thing where the raptors keep like sneaking in. There's not a lot of details other than it was apparently unnecessarily complicated. Eventually, to escape the velociraptors, they escape the compound on dirt bikes. And if people recall, there is a certain amount of some John Bell artwork that was very hard to contextualize.
Three pieces, yeah.
Of a dirt bike and 2 ATVs, of a Honda dirt bike and 2 Honda ATVs that are Jurassic branded with people going away. Now we know that
they are very what's the word? They're perfectly John Bell, perfectly Jurassic Park. They've got that proper feel to them. But anyway, that's a cool piece of art. I remember when that came out. I think Derek shared it with us first. It was very confusing as to how that was supposed to fit into the story, and then obviously the visual history guide gave us a much better insight into that. So that was the motorcycle sequence Spielberg always spoke of, the one he always wanted to get in.
It's in the game too, the Jurassic Park 3 Island Attack Game Boy Advance game. There's a little bit of a motorbike run away from the raptors.
Is that right?
There is. Grant gets on a little bit of a high speed chase down some, I guess, muddy fields, with some holes.
You know that this is random, a little off topic now, but there is a mobile game that was made after Jurassic Park 3, and it has the Jurassic Park 4 logo.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Is that the one with Malcolm?
I can't remember what was in it, but
he's rescuing something from poachers, rescuing eggs or something.
Point and click. It's definitely poachers. I had it on my old phone. I used to play it.
I remember this. I was like, what is this?
Yeah. I want to note the dirt bike sequence apparently got its start in the very first script, the one that got thrown away with all the kids, because there is a piece of a storyboard that has people riding the dirt bike, and it says Brooke versus Pteranodon, and it's like, who the hell is Brooke?
They should release all those. They should stop hiding them.
Catches up with the gang in the distance. And if I recall, there's also some David Lowery storyboards of like a raptor pouncing on the dirt bike and falling off a cliff or something along those lines. So a lot of these ideas that made it into the versions of the script started in that version that got thrown away that nobody liked. A lot of the set pieces were at least started to get their groundwork very early on. Would love to get my hands on those scripts to see what the set pieces were. I understand that the character dynamics were not great, but yeah. Anyhow, back to this version of the story, the one that basically laid the foundation for Jurassic Park 3 if you strip out the mainland stuff. They always wanted to have smarter velociraptors, so even here, they had Billy stealing the eggs from the raptor nest, leading them to be pursued by the raptors.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's Billy Hume.
It is Billy Hume, yes.
Hume. Billy Hume. I prefer Brennan. I have to admit, Billy Brennan. Mr.
Brennan. Better.
Iconic.
Yeah. I can never tell what's rock.
So,
well, technically, it's all rock. Rest in peace to that actress, by the way. She passed
anyhow,
away
the resonating chamber scene and getting rid of the eggs happens basically this portion after they escape from the raptors on dirt bikes, end up in the trees. The whole resonating chamber scene and the giving the eggs back scene happens then. And then the story switches back and forth to mainland Costa Rica. There, some of the officials visit a village where a dinosaur has supposedly been captured, only to find a broken cage and several dead villagers. Then local police also encountered frightened fishermen who have netted a headless animal carcass. It turns out to be a pteranodon carcass. And right when they identify the carcass as a pteranodon, we jump back to Isla Sorna, and that is right when Grant and company enter the aviary. So it's meant to be like this oh fuck moment, where like they find this corpse that we've seen that the things are wreaking havoc, and then Grant and co enter an aviary, and you're like, oh god. Very much the sequence plays out exactly the way it plays in the movie, only Billy actually dies during the moment. And then they take a barge and head to the engine marina, where they encounter the Spinosaurus, which then bites through the boat's wheelhouse. They get stuck in the cage falls in the water, spilling gasoline. In this version, it is Miles, or Eric, who escapes and shoots the flare gun and lights the Spinosaurus on fire. Um, so
Good
then
change to Paul Kirby. Good change.
So then we kind of cut back to the mainland. Now it's like a very military operation because they've decided like this is getting out of hand. There are villagers, there are dinosaurs on the mainland. Villagers are dying. Your cat is climbing your window. Villagers are dying, so they decide to do a military
Luckily, the
operation.
window's all closed.
They do a satellite scan of Isla Sorna. They see the plane that Grant and Co. were on has crashed. They presume them dead. So they send an A-10 Warthog fighter jets to wipe out the dinosaur population. Bombs are dropped, starting a dinosaur
Cluster bombs.
However, one of the pilots spot like the survivors, so they call off the bombing run. Now this is at the end of the movie. When Grant finds out that they are planning to kill the dinosaurs, he refuses to be evacuated, and he runs off into the jungle to stay with the dinosaurs, and they call off the military operation.
Never to be seen again.
Which is a fascinating part. Imagine seeing Grant. I'm not going anywhere. Runs into the jungle. I think it's a great idea though, because he is a well.
It fits his character for what they were building in that story. It fits. Like he was on the island in that one already. No, or he wants to go to the island and study it. He wants to go.
He wanted to go to the island.
He wants the dinosaurs. And completely opposite. I like the way they did it in Jurassic Park 3, the one we got. Maybe they did it in the same way originally. He's ambivalent toward them originally. Doesn't like them. Thinks they're monsters, and then he finds the beauty of them towards the end of the picture.
Yeah, I think it is cool in the JP3 we got how he's like, what InGen did in Jurassic Park, genetically engineered theme park monsters. Nothing
honestly,
more,
and that's
less.
the best. That's like the meat of the movie. That's where all the heavy dialogue is. And it's the best part of the movie. I think the setup is the best part of the film, aside from the turn-on sequence, of course. But the build-up and the setup, the world building is fantastic.
In that screenplay that Chris is reading about, having him actually want to be the one that studies the dinosaurs, believing that there's lessons to be learned about studying the ones that they did breed. I do like that, and I think the idea of him running into the jungle would have been hard to make not look comical, but I think, as you said, it makes sense for his character. I guess he could hide in the aviary again, maybe.
I don't know, man. This story, I see where the overly complicated comes in, but honestly, it's not that overly complicated. I just think, I don't know why they just, for what's your honest take on why you think they didn't go with this take of honestly a much better, deeper story to the whole mythos of Jurassic?
Yeah, that's the thing. I always struggle with, why did they chuck it? And I get what Chris is saying. Chris says, well, maybe they didn't have a final screenplay still, and they couldn't figure out the pacing, so they thought because of timing. But the way it was always reported was that they dumped the entire screenplay and started fresh, which we know they didn't do. They did keep a number of sequences, and they kept the characters
quite a significant amount.
Kind of, yeah. I don't understand the mainland stuff. I just don't know. Without asking Joe Johnston, I know he was asked.
It's interesting how it's never been repurposed.
He was asked for the book, but what did he say in the Ultimate Visual History? What was his reason for chucking that version? Or do they not touch on that?
He just says the story wasn't quite there, and it was complicated, and they opted to simplify the story. I think that's a pragmatic way of saying our hands were forced when they wouldn't let us delay the movie, so we had to simplify it. I think that's a way of basically him not putting the blame, of not saying, like, I would have kept it if I could have, but I couldn't. There wasn't enough time. But I think that, honestly, reading between the lines and also things that Joe Johnston and others have said over the years, they wanted to delay that movie. They wanted a mainland story. They wanted a more complex story. I think ultimately we got the simplified story simply because they weren't given enough time to make the larger story.
And maybe at the time as well, they were thinking, look, this will work, but we'll save the mainland for the next one. Maybe that's kind of what they were thinking during this as well, because we know that Joe was attached to Jurassic 4 for a long time, and Spielberg and Kathleen had said, even after Jurassic Park 3 came out, it's Joe's going to make a great Jurassic 4 kind of thing. So
he
it's
even
not
kept
like
talking about it for many years after.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not like they weren't planning it. They probably did have that kind of thought. Look, we'll save the mainland thing. We'll set it up at the end of the movie. We'll have the pteranodons flying off.
And then, unfortunately, Spielberg got in his head of militarizing the Raptors and hybrids, and everything kind of went wonky from there.
The good part about that is he's got it out of his system, so we can go back to the good stuff. We can go back to the mainland Costa Rican Panama plot. We can go back to it now.
Yeah, I would love that.
That is fixed. You know what I mean? We can go back now. We can go
I
back
hope.
to Jurassic Park.
I hope Spielberg's like idea for the Jurassic franchise going forward isn't like, okay, we laid the groundwork for that, now we can go full throttle into it. Like maybe like he came to the
If that happens, I will no longer be a fan of this franchise. I have no interest in watching military dinosaurs.
Yeah, I mean, I just really hope that. I think the best thing they could do is a back to basics story. I mean, I don't.
They have to at this point.
And honestly, I think people would be interested to go back to Jurassic Park. That
kind of like how Prey did it, kind of back to the basics, the roots. Yeah. Because honestly, Jurassic World Dominion, I know it didn't go as far over the top as it could have, but it was pretty over the top for a Jurassic movie. And
it's pretty over the top, yeah.
Yeah, and you should not go any more over to the top than that. You know, by the sequel standards, what you did in the last one, do more in the next one. They gotta not do that. They gotta go back and make much less. And like you said, the audience will appreciate that constraint.
The problem is for Universal, it is their big blockbuster movie franchise. It's their Marvel series at this point. That's how they consider it. And with
a slow Jurassic Park movie, I'm convinced can make money. It can make money. The name alone can sell the tickets.
I agree. I feel like they'd have much better.
And Universal knows this, I think.
Giving it less of a budget. You know, like one of those success stories. They give it a 20 mil, 30 mil budget, make something really tight and contained.
You could never do a Jurassic film for that budget, though. Like a cheap Jurassic film would probably be like 100.
Yeah, true. It would have to be a lot.
But
you know what I'm saying? You know, keep it kind of contained. But I just don't feel like it will happen. I feel if they do side stories, if they do what they consider spin-off movies, maybe that's where we'll get lucky. If they do a TV series, I just don't feel like they will now, because if Dominion hadn't made a Billy, then maybe we'd be having a different conversation. But unfortunately, regardless of what you think about that movie, it still made a hell of a lot of money and
made a lot of diminishing returns, and critical response just went down the toilet.
Critical and fan response, and ultimately one of the things they heard the most was this wasn't the movie people wanted to have. The idea of dinosaurs hitting the mainland, that's what really interested people. And they didn't really
didn't happen.
And they
got like 3 scenes of it
resonate. And I think taking this more personal approach, if they like take the kind of Costa Rica effect of the slow creep of the dinosaurs, going back in time and saying, hey, guess what? The way to tell that story is to kind of jump back in time and kind of tell it from the perspective of like a Costa Rican scientist.
I would love that.
Who had to deal with it. And maybe you can flash forward, and now that's like the world's problem. They're like, we tried to tell y'all, but nobody listened because it wasn't America, and the big corporations shut us up. You know, there's a lot of corruption, like covering everything up.
That would be a cool movie.
I think that's the way it's telling that sort of personal Costa Rican story of the slow creep of the natural outbreak, and then bringing it into present day, and maybe dialing back because the dinosaurs were everywhere in Dominion, which made no sense, and it was kind of silly. Dialing it back a little bit, but like also having the spread be wider than Costa Rica, but you can kind of tell that personal story. And I think if you had it from somebody whose their perspective is they've been dealing it with since like the late 90s and basically had no support, they had to deal, you know, all these villages were kind of thrown to the wind and basically all these attacks were covered up. And now this person is like the forefront expert, a Costa Rican scientist is the forefront expert of dinosaurs on the mainland, because they're one of the few people that have actually been dealing with it for 20 plus years. And now they're like, we try to tell y'all. I think having that type of perspective would be really interesting. And then going back to Costa Rica, finding a reason to go kind of closer to the origin of Jurassic Park. And tell them.
I think that's the thing. That's what a lot of fans want, especially fans who grew up with the original 3 movies. They still want the story that Jurassic Park 3 didn't deliver on, and the story that Jurassic Park 4 was. Everybody always assumed, and Dan's JP3 page always assumed Jurassic 4 was going to be. It always sounded like it was going to be this kind of mainland Costa Rica, going back to the first island plot kind of thing. And I think
it felt like a follow-up to JP3 was coming. That's what it felt like back in the day. And
but hey, here's one thing. You know, you can't tell. It doesn't exactly tell the tone of the movie. But if you look back on the DVDs, and you go through all the original concept logos for Jurassic Park 3, and when it was called Extinction and Breakout, you get a real sense that the movie was going to feel like a little bit like The Lost World in its tone. And it had this, if you look at all
Almost
those logos,
apocalyptic in a way.
they're broken, they're dark, they're bleak, even the ones
Mhm.
with like a baby embryo. you
That
know,
baby
like,
one's rancid. What are
yeah,
you doing there,
like
boys?
they were thinking some. There's even one with a baby skeleton.
It's outside the box. I'll give him that.
and but it hits that tone that I always wanted to feel. I always used to look at these logos and wish that that was the kind of movie we got, something a little bit more in line with The Lost World in its tone. And at
The
the end of the
problem,
day, I wish we.
I think that there's a lot that can be taken from the unmade version of Jurassic Park 3 still to this day, of that sort of
yeah,
mainland, like the Costa Rican, like kind of the slow creep, the 5 deaths, looking into the local populace, the way that it affected it, the way that it was covered up, and the way that it slowly spread out. And then also, you could probably borrow from a lot of the set pieces from the novels that never made it into the movies, because there are quite a few significant set
Yeah.
pieces that never made it in. Things like the raptor nest in the geothermal plains. You have moments like the sleeping T-Rex by the river, the Dilophosaurus doing the mating dance in the river. I mean, the Carnotaurus sequence in the Lost World, where they're stuck in the shed and the Carnotaurus are waiting to ambush them. There are so many set pieces that are ripe for the taking from the novels, and so many concepts from these unused stories, that I think that you can get a really nice back to basics story that also can maybe find a way to gel with where the stories have gone in Jurassic World era, but maybe recontextualize them in a way that feels a lot more grounded and true to Jurassic Park. So, like, it's making the type of movie that people who watch Jurassic Park wanted, love Jurassic Park wanted, while also not throwing away all the story elements that the Jurassic World films, but just sort of painting them in a different light. So you just sort of taking them from a different approach, and we kind of recontextualize the mainland stuff. Not saying that stuff didn't happen, but taking it from a different angle so we can kind of forget the outlandishness of what the Dominion movie said, and we just kind of see, oh, there's more to the story that we just never got to see.
you know
In
what? As you speak about this, Chris, you know what Universal should really do? I know they're not going to get rid of the bombastic dinosaur action. They're not going to do that because that's just what their brand is. Keep that in the Jurassic World franchise. If you want to make a small, like it's the more limited budget, and by limited, obviously 100 million ish, a thing, keep it in the Jurassic Park storylines. You know what I mean? Like, keep Jurassic Park almost as like an anthology, kind of like smaller scale, more intimate things, and you have your own bombastic, like your next JP4 to
They would
7.
be worried. I feel like they would be worried that people would just be confused at that point.
a
The
brand,
general audience.
brand
I
new
think the
together.
audience is smart enough, though. I think the audience is smart enough to know what Jurassic World is and what a Jurassic Park is at this point.
Yeah, you'd
Because
hope.
Jurassic World it's so distinctly different than Jurassic Parks that I think the audience also can feel that.
I've definitely said this before, but I never felt like we got Jurassic Park 4, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that thought. People always just say, well, Jurassic World is the fourth one.
I agree with you now.
We didn't get Jurassic Park 4. We got a soft reboot.
We got a new one. We got a Jurassic World. That's what it is. It's not Jurassic Park.
And
I don't
look,
it's
again,
Jurassic World.
If you like those movies, great. But personally,
I like
my
them,
own
so don't
personal
worry.
opinion, I dislike all three of them, and I have
hmm
no desire for them to be a part of the future, or if they make something that fills in the gaps in between. I hope that they just avoid those three, everything about them, because I miss that feeling even post Jurassic Park 3, where it was like, where can the story go? This exciting unknown. I miss that. Jurassic World and Jurassic World just felt like it skipped ahead too much into this hot. And I know that Spielberg wanted the new park, and that's the way it was going to be. But when I remember that day that Joe
got
Blow
stuck on that.
article came out and revealed the plot of Jurassic World, and I was sat there,
I was
and
so upset. I was like, not another park.
not another park.
And
What
they
are you
even
doing?
that article talked about like taming a T-Rex or riding it or something. It was like horrible. And Colin had to come out and say like, no, that's not happening. But the rest of it's true. We were like, oh no,
Yeah,
park.
that was crazy.
People
That
said
was
we
the
wanted to
whole-
see the open park. I'm like, the entire point of Jurassic Park is to show that the park can exist. That's the entire point of the franchise. It's to show that you can't control it. Even if you control it for 5 years, you lose control. It's like, it's just a repeat of the same story.
Yeah.
Very frustrating.
It was the thing with Jurassic World as well. Again, there's loads of reasons why people would like it, but it just, you know what's coming. it's not like it's gonna be successful. It's gonna crumble and fall because that's what the first trilogy was all about. It's a shame we went there, but maybe one day they will fill in the gap, or they will make something that definitely is harkens back to the original three, the original feeling of the first trilogy.
We
And
just need the right director to make the right pitch to the right people at Universal. That's
So the
all we
right
need. We need a
situation,
passionate
really.
director, a real passionate director about the story who wants to go back to like 1997. Set the story in 97, pre-Katrina, or pre-Katrina. I guess it is pre-Katrina, but pre-Clarissa, right? Hurricane Clarissa.
That's the one.
yeah,
But I'm gonna stand by. Yeah, it's pre-Katrina as well, though, technically. But
it's
either
true.
way,
I mean,
I would love a story and the set then. Like everyone's wearing like '90s clothing. The
Yeah,
tech is
getting back
old.
to a more
Big fat
tactile,
CRTs. You know what I
analog
mean?
feel.
Real set decoration, not just this artificial metallic, just like copy paste Avengers
so one
background. I
thing
don't
we
want
spoke
that.
about on the last podcast, Assis, was how the actual real world parks, the Islands of Adventure parks, have kind of, and honestly, there's a few comments now on the podcast episode on YouTube where people are agreeing they've been to the park and they think it's so sterile looking and it doesn't blend with the Jurassic Park stuff. It kind of just looks like it doesn't look
Yeah,
great. And it's true. I
Problem.
think those
I think
elements are not
there's a
visually
real
appealing.
issue. There's a real issue with, I think, bringing Jurassic Park into mainland stuff. When the dinosaurs come into our everyday, it becomes less special. Jurassic Park is special because Jurassic Park doesn't exist. We can't go there. If a like when you see dinosaur run down Malta, the effect of that goes away real quick because it's we've seen that set we've seen the background, that environment every day in our daily lives. It's not special. You know what I
well,
mean?
arguably, that's why I would suggest sticking to more remote and wild locations of the world, and
Hmm.
taking a look at the impact of the dinosaurs getting directly to Costa Rica.
Have
And
some of the culture, the local culture in the movie. It'll add
Yeah,
so much more to the sets, to the
but that
life
that
and the feel of the movie.
even in
You know what I mean?
Dominion could have done that. It feels like such a wasted opportunity because all Dominion did was take us to a quote unquote island that Biosyn had created their own
Even
preserve,
Malta, the
which was
feeling of
fantastic.
Malta doesn't. It's just it could have been any generic like city within that area.
Malta's so silly. That whole black market sequence, I think, is so goofy and silly. And I think the whole like when the guy, I know that he was the competition winner, the guy on the electric scooter who gets picked up, but it makes no sense. There's two
It's just
massive
stupid. It's
behemoths
out
there,
of.
and he
yeah,
just like cycle. It goes through them on the scale.
But
Like,
that's
did
the
you not
difference
see them,
between.
idiot?
But that's the difference between something like Jurassic World, any of them, like especially the last one, and a Jurassic Park 3 is like the outlandishness of a Jurassic Park 3. Yes, it has a talking raptor, which is ridiculous, but but that's a dream sequence. The stuff that happens in the reality of the movie, like what
Mm.
happens in like when they're awake, I guess. There's nothing that's like obscene. No one's getting like thrown up like crazy like Zara. Like when Udesky dies, it's a step. He gets like a claw in the back, right?
Gets like his
Same with
spine damaged by a
Cooper.
raptor claw. Yeah.
Cooper didn't get like the Spinosaur didn't like throw him up in the air, catch him, and then throw him into the ground. Spinosaur just grabbed him. You know, it's simple.
And
It's
none of the
real.
characters in
Eddie
Jurassic
Carr.
Park 3 are superheroes. Whereas in the
Yeah,
Jurassic World era,
they
you
get
know,
hurt.
why are the characters not scientists? Why and okay, Wu was in it. Well, Wu's character was written so poorly throughout all three movies. It was pointless having Wu.
It's not a good example to lean
What
on.
was
Like the
his
one scientist
character
we
arc?
got was horribly written.
He
Somehow he's
became
a
a
good guy
bad guy
now.
in Jurassic World for some reason, and then by Dominion he'd realized sort of that he was the bad guy, but then redeemed himself by fixing the problem he had made. Like what? Okay, great.
I think Owen Grady is a byproduct of Jurassic Park 4 starting its development in like 2004, when it was all about like American military hoorah type of characters, and Owen Grady fully is that character that they always said, oh, we want an American military vet.
But he's
It's like,
not even that American badass. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's not a Josh Brolin. It's Chris Pratt. Like, he's not that gruff
Yeah.
American badass. Like, you know what I'm talking about? He's not
I
like,
just think having a
I don't
scientist,
know. He's not Josh Brolin or something.
a scientist or somebody. I mean, I know Owen worked with the dinosaurs and he did provide some input for the raptors, but I think I always felt like we learned so much more about the dinosaurs through the perspective of Grant and others, as opposed to some,
Yes.
or like Sarah Harding. You never really got those types of dynamics from Owen. I think having those types of characters is really key of like not a badass character. You're I don't want to say everyday character, because like Grant also is an expert of a field, but he's like a very real,
And you know
relatable
what?
guy. He just happens to be an expert in paleontology. But I think getting back to that element and getting away from these outlandish. I mean, like when they set up Kayla, and they're like, oh yeah, we want Kayla to lead the franchise forward. It's like Kayla's just
Why?
she's Owen 2.0.
Yeah, her character wasn't fascinating or interesting enough, or even written well enough to be some. Why'd you need a movie about Kayla?
Now, I never assumed that they meant the movie would be about Kayla. That Kayla would just be like that, just like Lost World isn't about Malcolm. I just presumed that they meant like, oh, this is the character that we're going to bring to like kind of get dragged into the next adventure one way or another. But all the same, she could be a supporting character, cool, but I'm not interested in that. And when people online are like, oh, I want the Kayla versus Sonia Santos movie, please no.
You're the wrong. None of that sounds Jurassic Park. But then I guess a lot of the audience grew up or were, when Jurassic World was new to them. So maybe that's just the way it is now. That's kind of
maybe we're too old. We're just old now.
No, when you look at the diminishing returns,
7, 8, and 9 anymore.
When you look at the
man, I wish I was 7
films, when you look at the reviews of the films, it's certainly not an isolated thing where it's just the legacy fans that have these opinions. It's the general audience as well. It might not be as articulate, it might not be as involved as our own opinions, but overall, I think that there was a misstep in the direction of the newer movies, and I think that there is room for course correction. And I don't mean throw away everything that the new movies did, but I also mean don't retcon them. Just don't bank heavily. Just kind of take a fresh start that banks more heavily on the groundwork that the Jurassic Park films and novels.
And that is the smart way to do it. I personally want them to totally retcon everything that happened since 2015.
That'll never happen. They have all the Camp Cretaceous. They got that new one thing coming up potentially. You got that theme park in Texas.
It was all actually Grant's dream on the plane.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah. The real JP3 is coming still.
Next Jurassic movie opens up, turns out Jurassic Park 3, Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom, and Jurassic World Dominion did not happen. It just picks up with Grant waking up going, who hit me? Wait, didn't I already say this?
Oh my god, that'd be amazing, dude. Can you imagine a what if?
That would be great. But it is fascinating. Going back, what happened to Jurassic Park 3 is a really interesting story. And Dan Stephen, Stuck on Sauna, his podcast series, he interviewed a number of people. He interviewed Jack Johnson, people that worked on Jurassic Park 3. Really worth, if you haven't listened to his podcast, really worth listening to that, because there's so much in there. He spoke to a lot of people that were there at the time that Jurassic Park 3 was going through its production hell, and gave all new insight into that whole era. So it's really worth listening to. He also did a whole
great storyboards that David Lowery shared that gave us even like further insight that the visual history book did not, and that the scripts did not. So you're really able. There's so much to do that we couldn't cover it all in this podcast, because there is just so much more.
There is so much more, and it's a fascinating tale. The production of Jurassic Park 3 is a really interesting one, and almost a sad one, because we didn't end up getting what we wanted.
It is a little bit sad. I don't want to say that. It's a bit sad. My heart hurts a little bit.
But as much as I watched Jurassic Park 3 last night. I loved it. I had a great time.
Same.
And you were the same as Thesis. It was one of your favorites, right?
It's my number 2, boys and girls. Number 2, right behind JP.
They go in order for me. They really do. First one, second one, third one. But I know that a lot of people do prefer the third for some reason over The Lost World. I'll never understand it personally, but I get it. It's fun. But listen, it's been great chatting Jurassic Park 3 and I guess the future of the franchise with you guys. As always, we always end up going on rants about what we want to happen. Hopefully soon enough, we'll be talking about what's actually going to happen. But until then, all we can suggest is you go back to your DVD copy or VHS copy of Jurassic Park 3 and watch that, because the colors are much better than on the 4K transfer. That's what I'm going to say about that. Let's bring it back. Jurassic Park 3, everybody.